With Eric Cain, Brent Hubbs, Volquest.com. The Tennessee baseball team is Omaha bound after winning the rubber match, the Super Regionals 5-0 over Southern Mississippi. Lots to get into, Eric Cain. Let's start first with just the game itself, just the win. What a pitching performance by Drew Beam. Timely hitting, but again, it all starts on the bump, and Drew Beam from the get-go was outstanding in this rubber game.
Yeah, that's the third straight quality start for him. He went through a little bit of a rough patch towards the end of the regular season, but then responded really well. South Carolina looked good. He looked phenomenal against Charlotte to win the Clemson Regional last weekend, and then tonight he looked really good as well. When that curveball is working for Drew Beam, man, he's got a whole lot of confidence, and he's pumping a fastball in the mid 90s right now. His changeup's working as well, but tonight and a lot against Charlotte last weekend, it's that curveball that's really been, working well for him. So, he finished with 7 strikeouts and 1 walk. He threw a season high 106 pitches. So that was really good. And he was just playing confidently. And when Tennessee got that 1 run, you needed to score more for sure. But the way Drew Beam was pitching, it's almost like you weren't even worried. And ultimately, when you can hand the ball off to an Aaron Combs and a Chase Burns, you feel a whole lot better about yourself, pitching in a deep ball game. So he was incredible tonight, and of course, because of his efforts, and partially because of his efforts, Tennessee's Omaha bound.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned the curveball. The other thing I thought he did a terrific job of, and really, I thought, and Chase Burns did this as well, with the exception of the 9th inning a little bit. They got ahead of hitters,
Yeah,
and they set hitters up so well. You just didn't feel like the Southern Miss hitters could set on anything because they weren't ahead in the count. They didn't get a very many 2-0 counts where they were looking for a fastball down the middle, or setting on go on something. That they did a really good job. Tennessee's pitchers did, of getting ahead of hitters and putting Southern Miss's hitters at a disadvantage. Whereas Tennessee, when they made their hay, took advantage of being ahead in the count and put themselves in a position where they got some pitches to hit, and they hit enough of them to score 5 runs.
yeah, they did, and I thought, points and times, I thought Tennessee was really good with their plate approach, their plate discipline. Maui Ahuna had a couple of really nice ABs, had worked a couple of walks, and then of course that transpired before his opposite field home runs. I thought he saw the ball really well tonight. Zane Denton, of course, he had a 3-run home run, but he was down 0-2 in the count at one point in time and worked it back full, and then worked a 7-pitch walk down to first base, and he was seeing it really, really well tonight. And so even when they weren't ahead in the count, they weren't attacking, they were still, from my vantage point, kind of giving it a good look at the plate. And so I kind of saw that from Tennessee's hitters. And then on the mound, yeah, you're right. Just attacking the zone, pounding the zone, confidence in your stuff. I mean, Chase Burns came in, and he just throws straight gas, right? And he hit triple digits. I want to say 4 pitches in a row, and just showing all that emotion, coming off the field. He owned it too. He was owning that moment. And it was such a big moment for Tennessee as well, because the game was getting a little cringy there for a moment. There was, a couple of guys on, and you were trying to protect that 4-run lead, that 5-run lead, and Chase Burns came on and did just that. And so, I thought Tennessee worked ahead in the count, on the mound, and even when you were behind in the count at the plate, some of those guys I mentioned, they were putting together really, really good ABs, making the pitcher work, and then finding the pitch that they wanted.
Yeah, and give credit. I mean, when they made the pitching change and it wasn't Burns, I texted you like, what are they doing here? Where's Burns? But it was, I mean, it played out absolutely perfectly the way Frank Anderson and Tony Vitello wanted it to play out there. Just a really good management, I thought, of the baseball game, and it helps when your starter goes as deep as Drew Beam did.
Yeah, no doubt. And Tony said in post game, it was like, "Hey, I want to give a big time shout out and give credit to Aaron Combs. He's got some nasty stuff. He's a guy that's pitched really well for Tennessee this year, and you got all these horses in the bullpen that you're just ready to go. And he was hot at the time, and it allowed them to go and get Burns hot behind him. It allowed them to kind of have a stopgap there, and they liked the matchup there. And I mean, that was a big moment, right? I mean, that was
Huge.
that was a leadoff man, Matthew Etzel, coming in and picking up that huge strikeout, and then you turn it over to Burns to face Dickerson and Wilkes. But Tony Vitello, very complimentary of Aaron Combs in the postgame press conference, and of course, he had a whole lot of good things to say about Chase Burns, and why not? I mean, what he's done since going to the bullpen. You think of the Vanderbilt series, but he was incredible, co-SEC pitcher of the week. Points and times that he looked like at the end of the regular season. What he did for Tennessee against Clemson last weekend, getting Tennessee out of the massive jam here tonight. I mean, he's got electric stuff, and he's going to be a big league pitcher one day. He got demoted to the bullpen, but he has made the most of that, and it's a great problem to have if you're Tony Vitello, because best case scenario, you can call on him for these moments in postseason play, and he helped them win a ball game tonight and on to Omaha.
Well, and he was the catalyst for this team turning a lot of things around. You mentioned getting, what he gave them in the Clemson game to get to a super regional was huge, obviously. I go back to that Vanderbilt game, Eric, and when you look big picture here, let's take the 5-0 win out of the super regional. Let's take that away and go back just kind of season in general. That Vanderbilt rally, that Friday night rally from Vanderbilt was a huge turning point for this baseball team. They started to find themselves in that series, starting with that rally for a win. I don't think you can overstate the significance of that win for this baseball team to get to this moment that they're at. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. I mean, that is 100%. That's the turning point of this baseball season. And it was fun to kind of talk about it that night. And it's like, okay, well, this could be the game where it all changes, but it's up to Tennessee to make that change so they can look back and say, okay, again, this is kind of where it all started. Down by a couple of runs in the bottom of the ninth inning, unlikely heroes, right? You had Kavaris Tears, you had your true freshman Dylan Dron. They hit those home runs, tying the ball game up. You go into extras, a guy that isn't starting, kind of going through it a little bit, and Griffin Merritt comes in, hits the walk-off home run. You got good pitching. You play good defense that night, and Vanderbilt was a pretty good ball club, right? And so at the time, you said this could change it, and it certainly did. It showed that Tennessee can win games against quality opponents. It can win games in come from behind fashion. It can win games with walk-off home runs. It can play good defense against quality opponents, and Tennessee just kind of built on that the whole way through, and they figured out their outfield rotation. They figured out the lineup. The at-bats got better and better. The pitching came around. And, Andrew Lindsay was already in the starting rotation at that point, but he just continued to get better and better. Drew Beam got better as the year went on, especially in postseason play. So, yeah, that Vanderbilt game one of that series that Friday night, turning point of the season. It allowed them to win a game like at Clemson last weekend, and ultimately put them in position to go to Omaha. And, now that you are going to Omaha, and I think a lot of that can go back, circle that date on the calendar, that Vanderbilt game.
Yeah, and I think that game started to put the personality on this team, and I think it also gave this coaching staff a better feel for the personality of this team. You know what I mean? Like there was a real identity. It wasn't just the win. There was an identity that started to be created there. Everybody kind of settled in and said, okay, it's baseball. Let's go play baseball. Because then all of a sudden Griffin Merritt starts doing more things for you. Zane Denton starts to get hot for you. Burns settles into his role and whatever it is. Lindsay knows, hey, I'm the Friday night guy from here on out. To me, that's where they started putting not just the outfield pieces, but a lot of the other pieces together for this team. And everybody kind of said, okay, this is my role. I'm good with it. Now let's go make something happen. And they did.
Yeah. Again, it was, we say it so many times, and Tony said it and I've said it, and, we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I mean, it just takes time. I mean, you lost so much from arguably the best regular season, team in college baseball history, right? You lost so much. You had brand new starters. Sure, you brought back Jared Dickey and Christian Moore and Blake Burke, but they were not everyday players. And so you got to replace that. You got to figure out, who fits where in the lineup. You got to figure out who plays best in the corner outfield, who's your center fielder, who's your best bat off the bench. Defensively, these guys, again, who were everyday players, they came on as pinch hitters. They were DHs. They didn't play the field every game last year. So there were some growing pains for Blake Burke, who's playing some pretty good defense in postseason play.
Good point.
And, Christian's gotten better at the Keystone. And again, you just kind of have to figure it out a little bit. And that's what Tennessee's done. And sure, you make some mistakes. I mean, in game one, they all run together because of the stupid rain. But in game one, I think Tennessee had a base running mistake. And I think Tennessee obviously had a couple of defensive errors with Hunter Ensley in center field. Like, it's not going to be perfect. That's baseball a lot of times. But I mean, if we sat there in March and points and times in April and said, gosh, is this team going to make the playoffs? Is this team going to host a regional? Is this team, and now you're going to Omaha. It's almost kind of like a surreal moment. And it just, again, you say it all the time. Baseball is a marathon. It is not a sprint. There are teams, the Washington Nationals in 2019 were 4th place in the NL East in the month of May, or at the beginning of June. They go on and win the World Series. That's just kind of how baseball works. And Tennessee just got better and better and better, winning some of those games along the way to pick up some motivation and all that, like Vanderbilt. And it came in, huge dividends towards the end of the season.
All right, we'll wrap it up here with a couple more things. You've covered this team from the start. I mean, you were in Arizona. I mean, you were game one all the way through. How impressed have you been with Tony Vitello's patience with this team to build it to where they're playing their best at the end of the year? And what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, it's been huge. Guys like Christian Scott, who, so many people gave up on. So many people were wondering why. Why are you in the lineup? Why are you getting opportunities to go play right field and center field? But Tony just kept running him out there, and he's proven to be a guy, one of your best hitters on the team, obviously one of your best outfielders, and he's been a big reason why you are going to Omaha. Reasons to stick with Blake Burke at first base when defensively, a lot of the times there was just saying, is there anybody else that can play first base? Sticking with some of the guys in bullpen roles. Seth Halverson kind of went through it a little bit, midway through the season, but you knew that he was a guy that was going to help you out so much as the year went on. So you can look at it a couple of different ways. I think this is a really impressive year from Tony Vitello, because of all the, things you had to navigate through, all the struggles you had to overcome, all that type of stuff, and credit where credit's due, because, he continued to say that, Rome wasn't built in a day. You got to find the right puzzle pieces and all that. And he did do that. But also, this team is really talented. It was just not very experienced. Sure, the pitchers were experienced and all that, but this team has always had so much talent. It was about getting those guys to reach their potential. And you're still not there. I mean, it's not like anybody's perfect right now. But this staff and Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson, Josh Elander, all those guys, they've done a great job of getting them to play that way and getting them just to get better week by week by week. So I can't say enough. I mean, this is a completely different team than that I saw in Arizona back in February. This is a completely different team that we saw, take on Arkansas back in the first couple of weeks of SEC play. And it's a team that's just continuing to get better. And they've been good enough, and they beat a really good Southern Miss team, best 2 out of 3 on the road in a great environment. And now it's going on to Omaha.
Yeah, and obviously will be plenty of talk about Omaha, plenty of challenges. You don't have a ton of experience in terms of guys who have been there before. How do they handle those things and all that kind of stuff is certainly going to be fascinating to watch. But for now, it's celebration time, because this is a baseball team, had a lot of expectations, a lot of unfair, undue pressure on them early.
Yep.
But they have found their way to celebrate tonight, this morning, whatever time it is now, to find themselves in the Final Four. Is essentially, I likened it to being in a regional final in basketball, and to get to Omaha is such a terrific accomplishment for this team and for this coaching staff. So, fun weekend, fun ride, fun baseball team that's starting to figure it out. We'll see what happens in Omaha, Eric. It should be a lot of fun.
I do want to say one other thing, and yeah, I can't wait to go to Omaha. Man, it's going to be so much fun to see that environment, see that experience. As a journalist, you want to cover cool events like that, so I'm so excited. And I know I'm delirious. It's the middle of the night right now, but still, I'm jacked up to go home, see my wife for maybe 36 hours, and hit the road again. But looking forward to that. But I do want to say this too: 365 days. Well, now because it's Tuesday, 366 days. Tennessee got knocked out of the Supers at home against Notre Dame exactly a year ago when this game started. And then you fast forward 1 year to the future, you're not at home, you're on the road, a team that's been so frustrating, a team that did not look like a regional team early in the season, a team that was unfairly compared to that 2022 team all year long, kind of avenges that loss, right? And you're Omaha bound. Tony Vitello gave a whole lot of credit to the 2022 team, up there at his post-game press conference tonight, saying that it hurts because they couldn't make it to Omaha. But those guys, the Lipscombs, the Gilberts, the Becks, huge reasons why this team is going to Omaha. So I just thought it was interesting. Literally almost a year to the day, you have a heartbreaking loss, and then you're dogpiling on somebody else's turf, going to Omaha. that's baseball. It's been fun to watch, and Tennessee season continues now in Nebraska.
And that's a coach who's got a really good culture and a program, who is talking about the culture in his program that his players in the locker room built. Because here's the one thing you know about Tony Vitello. He lets his players manage their baseball team. The locker room is kind of their playground. It's not his playground. He doesn't go into the locker room very often. It's for the players to handle things. This team, through his guidance, have started to figure out how to handle things. And as you mentioned, they're one of 8 going to play for a chance to win a national title. Eric, great coverage in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Safe travels home. Kiss your wife, wash your clothes, pack your bags, Ma. You're heading to Omaha. Congratulations. Enjoy.
I'm excited. I'm excited to bring coverage over at Volquest.com. Thanks so much, Brent.
That's Eric Cain from Hattiesburg, Mississippi.